Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at something called a polling publisher.
Right.
Now, before
Right.
you think we're like diving into the world of publishing houses and stuff,
Right.
we're actually talking about how software applications talk to each other.
Yeah, that's right. And it's actually a lot more interesting than it sounds.
It really is.
You'd be surprised.
You sent over some fascinating articles from microservices.io
Yeah.
by Chris Richardson. And
Good stuff.
let me tell you, this stuff is surprisingly juicy. We're going like behind the scenes of how apps work,
Yeah.
especially those built with a microservices architecture.
Right.
Think of it like instead of one giant piece of software, it's more like a team of smaller programs all working together.
Exactly. Each of those smaller programs is like a specialized team member responsible for a specific task.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of this polling publisher, can you give us a quick rundown on what microservices architecture actually means?
Absolutely. In a nutshell, imagine you're building a house. Okay.
Instead of constructing everything as one massive structure, you break it down into smaller independent units.
Yeah.
The kitchen, the living room, the bedrooms, each with its own specific purpose.
So each room is like its own self-contained unit.
Exactly.
And you can work on each one separately.
Precisely. That's the beauty of microservices.
Okay.
Each service is like its own mini program responsible for a specific function within the larger application.
Right.
This approach makes apps more flexible, easier to update, and faster to develop.
Makes sense. But like any good team communication is key.
Right.
How do these independent services talk to each other?
That's where things get really interesting. Microservices communicate through messages, like sending little memos back and forth.
Okay.
Imagine one service needs to tell another service, hey, I just updated this piece of data.
Right.
They would do so by sending a message.
Okay, so far so good. But where does the polling publisher fit into all of this?
Well, imagine you've got one service that needs to send a message to another.
Before that message is sent out into the wider system, it's often placed in a holding area called an outbox. Think of it like a post office sorting room where messages pile up before being delivered.
So the outbox is like a temporary storage space
Mm-hmm.
for messages waiting to be sent.
Exactly. And this is where the polling publisher steps in.
Okay.
It's constantly checking that outbox, looking for new messages to deliver.
So it's like that friend who constantly refreshes their email,
Right.
waiting for an important reply.
Exactly. But in this case, it's all about ensuring those messages get delivered reliably and efficiently, especially when you're dealing with applications that handle tons of data and user interactions.
Reliability is key. So this polling publisher is always on the lookout, making sure messages don't get lost in the shuffle.
Right.
That's pretty cool. But like any system, I'm guessing there are upsides and downsides to this approach.
You're absolutely right. There are always trade-offs in software design. One of the biggest advantages is its flexibility. It works seamlessly with a wide variety of databases, specifically these things called SQL databases,
Right.
which are like incredibly common in software development. It's like having a universal translator for data.
That's super handy.
Yeah.
So it's like having a Swiss Army knife
Right.
for message delivery.
Exactly. But even the most versatile tools have their limitations.
Yeah.
One of the challenges with the polling publisher is maintaining the precise order of messages because it's constantly checking for new messages. There's a chance that some messages might arrive slightly out of order.
So if the order of operations is super important,
Right.
like in financial transactions or something, this could be a real problem.
Precisely. Imagine if your bank processed deposits and withdrawals out of order.
Yeah.
That'd be a recipe for chaos.
Yeah, total chaos.
So in scenarios where message order is paramount, there are alternative approaches.
Okay, so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
Speaking of alternative, the article mentioned something called transaction log tailing. What is that all about?
That's a great question. Transaction log tailing is like the high security courier service
Oh.
of the microservices world. Instead of periodically checking for new messages, it establishes a direct line to the database's transaction log.
The transaction log. Is that like a diary that the database keeps recording every single change?
Exactly. It's a detailed record of every data modification.
Okay.
By tapping into this log tailing can deliver messages in real time, ensuring absolute accuracy and order.
Wow, that sounds incredibly efficient. But I have a feeling it must come with its own set of challenges.
You're right. There's always a trade-off. Implementing transaction log tailing can be more complex and resource-intensive than a polling publisher.
Right.
It requires specialized knowledge and careful configuration to work flawlessly.
So it's like choosing between a reliable postal service and a dedicated courier.
Right.
Both have their pros and cons depending on your needs and your
Oh,
resources.
a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of software architecture, making strategic decisions to balance speed, reliability, and complexity. It's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
So we've got the polling publisher, our trusty message checker. Right.
And transaction log tailing the high-speed courier,
Yeah.
both essential players in the world of microservices, helping those independent services communicate effectively.
And it's this seamless communication that ultimately makes or breaks a user's experience.
Yeah.
When done well, these behind-the-scenes operations are invisible to the user.
It's like the difference between a well-choreographed dance and a chaotic free-for-all, right? Behind every smooth and enjoyable user experience is a carefully orchestrated system of communication and coordination.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how these seemingly small technical choices can have a huge ripple effect on the overall performance and reliability of the applications we use every single day.
It's amazing to think that all this stuff is going on behind the scenes, polling publishers and transaction log tailors all working away to make our digital life smoother.
It really is. And the more we understand how these systems work, the more we can appreciate, I think, the complexity and the ingenuity that goes into building even the simplest apps that we use every day. Totally. It's like peeking behind the curtain and realizing there's this whole world of machinery making the magic happen.
Precisely. And just like a well-maintained machine, a well-designed microservices architecture can handle tons of users, massive amounts of data, all while delivering a really smooth experience.
So next time an app I'm using just works, I'll know there's a good chance these patterns are quietly doing their thing in the background.
Exactly. And hey, maybe you'll even impress your friends with your knowledge of polling publishers and transaction log tailing.
Yeah, right. I'll be sure to drop that knowledge bomb at my next tech meetup. But seriously, a huge thanks to Chris Richardson for writing those articles on microservices.io. You really broke down some complex stuff in a way that was easy to understand. So thanks for that.
Yeah, Chris is great. It's always fun to dig into these topics and kind of have those aha moments.
Definitely. And for our listeners out there, if you want to learn more and really geek out on this stuff, be sure to check out Chris Richardson's work over at microservices.io. He's got a ton of great resources over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And hey, while you're at it, why not check out our show code Impact? We do a deep dive into a new tech topic every single week. Everything from AI to cybersecurity, you name it.
Exactly. We're here to help you navigate the ever-changing world of technology one deep dive at a time. And you can find our show code Impact on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and all the other usual places.
So hit that subscribe button and we'll catch you in the next episode. Keep those minds curious.